Honorable Member of Abau.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask a question without notice to the Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Energy, Member for Sinasina Yangugmo, and Leader of the Papua New Guinea National Party. Mr. Speaker, the party that I represent, our development party, its principal policy is power to the people. Literally, the party recognizes that the countries, communities, whether up on the tops of the mountains or down the valleys or the distant islands, must have access to electricity. Because we as a party believe that electricity positively impacts on lives, improves health, business, education, etc. However, as you and I have been experiencing, including the many power blackouts, and including the low electricity density, that is the coverage of our population, and Minister for State-owned Enterprises could advise us on the actual coverage of electricity of the entire country. My view is that it's less than 30% of our people are covered by electricity. And therefore, the commitment before our nation hosted APEC that by 2030, 70% of our people should at least have access to power. But Mr. Speaker, you and I know that covering the country through the main grid has been wanting for a long, long time. For example, my little district, Abau, is not far from Port Moresby, and the main grid stops at Kuikila, and it has stopped for 47 years, and I'm still waiting. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, what is the solution? And therefore, my question to the Honorable Minister. I believe, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, we have a point of order. What's your point of order, Honorable
Mr. Speaker,
Minister?
those are very good questions, but he's raising electricity issues, and those are under the Minister of State-owned Enterprises, Honorable William Duma, but he has referred to the Minister of Petroleum, so that's a confusion if that can be clarified, Mr. Speaker.
To choose the responsible minister, and the minister must listen to the question to understand why I have chosen.
Let me address the point of order, Honorable Member Abau. Honorable Minister, now I'm sit down, I'm stop, Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Energy. So, Honorable Member Abau will ask him this question, and in order, local Minister of Power and Energy. So, Minister, Honorable Member, you can go ahead and ask your question, Honorable Minister.
Minister for Higher Education, but my question is not related to the electrification under the SOEs. My question now is on the off-grid, the small power systems in the country. Because like Abau, I have waited for 47 years to bring the main grid to Abau. I think it will take another 50 years for Abau to have electrification. And therefore, the nation now should really seriously look at off-grid electrification. That is small power systems throughout the countries, in the islands, in the remote areas, like what Catholic Mission has been doing with small hydro schemes in their church organizations throughout the country. Therefore, my question to the Honorable Minister is this. Being the minister responsible for the National Energy Authority, I understand that this falls in the ambit of that area, and I also understand that the United Nations Development Program has been supporting through our government request, has been supporting NEA, and in particular to relook at the regulations of power systems in this country. And I, for one, Mr. Speaker, is very keen on the progress of the off-grid small power systems in this country. And therefore, my question is, Mr. Speaker, through you, Mr. Minister, I understand that the National Energy Authority is looking at the development of the regulations of the off-grid systems in this country. The question is, how far has those regulations been progressed, and will it be coming to the National Executive Council for clearance so that His Excellency the Governor General can clear it? Because the reason is, without the regulations, this enormous space for off-grid electrification will not be controlled. We need a regulation to be in place so that those who want to provide off-grid can use the regulation to guide them on how much voltage, what agreements they should have with the communities or the DDAs, who is going to be responsible, what are the dispute resolution issues, which all the regulations do. So, Speaker, I have negotiated with the UNDP, and UNDP has nominated Kupiano to be the trial for an off-grid system, but they cannot start without the availability of the regulations. And therefore, my one question is, Minister, can you please progress the regulations through to Cabinet? If you don't have the copy of it, I think I have forwarded a copy to the chairman of the NEA so that can move this together, because I want the off-grid systems to be offered to our country, because the main grid will never reach the isolated parts of our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister of Petroleum Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the important question from the Honourable Member for Abau. Rural electrification is a very important part of the government work and activities. And on regulation, to get straight to the question that he's asked about whether or not our regulation for doing work in off-grid areas have been prepared, I want to assure the member that just as of yesterday, I communicated with the Managing Director for National Energy Authority, and he has assured me that a very substantial amount of work has already been done. So I expect that within the next 2 months or so, it should be finalized and we should be able to bring it to Cabinet for approval before it's signed off by the Governor General. So a lot of work has been put into it already. And I must point out that, Mr. Speaker, the National Energy Authority was created just short of 2 years ago. And only last year we appointed the Managing Director, and the systems and procedures being progressively established. But this off-grid, a set of regulation for the provision of off-grid power supply is not there, and donor agencies like the UNDP and even those people who have made commitment to supply us with rural electrification in the APEC 2018 APEC meeting are also keen to get into that area, but all of them are waiting for a regulatory framework which they could then follow to establish or get into that area off-grid to provide power. So I'm also aware, I've spoken to the representative of the United States government here in Port Moresby, and I'm assured that this Abau project is one of the pilot projects. They are waiting for the regulations to be prepared. I've got an appointment to meet with that representative next week when this parliament adjourns, and we will crystallize our respective positions so that any donor agencies, foreign governments who want to help in that area can proceed. But the regulations are important, and we're putting every emphasis to it, and I want to assure the member and the parliament that we should have it ready within the next couple of months. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.